Garrett, Pastor Edwin Beckles, and Councilman Charles Boyce for their hospitality. Give it up for the local representatives and clergy. I want to thank law enforcement, first responders, everybody keeping us safe at this event. Give it up for our law enforcement officers and first responders. Thank you for taking care of us today. I'm here to introduce Reverend Warnock. And before I bring him up to the microphone, let's be very clear about what we're about today. So, Walton County, say this with me right now. Say vote. Vote. Say vote. Vote. Say vote. Vote. Monroe, it was about a year and a half ago when I had the pleasure of running for Senate alongside this man. We proved the power of the vote. We proved the power of our democracy. And I know there's a lot of chatter in the final few weeks of any campaign, and you're going to hear about what the pundits are saying and so on. Let me just remind y'all of this. Everybody in the country who makes their living and stakes their reputation on predicting the outcomes of elections counted us out. They counted us out. They didn't think that the state of Georgia, the heart of the old Confederacy and the cradle of a civil rights movement, was about to send a 33-year-old Jewish son of an immigrant and a black pastor who holds Dr. King's pulpit at Ebenezer Baptist Church to the U.S. Senate. But that's exactly what you did. You proved the power of the vote. Without Georgia, there's no Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court. There's no infrastructure legislation. There's no legislation to strengthen veterans' health care by more than we have in a generation. And let me ask all of the veterans and active duty service members, please raise your hands and be recognized and thanked by this crowd. Thank you for your service. Thank you for all you've done for our country. I've spent the last year and a half serving alongside this man. And I'm not just out here because Raphael Warnock is a Democrat. It's deeper than political party. It's about the quality, the integrity, the values embodied by those who represent us. Senator Warnock is fighting every day for ordinary working Georgians because he understands the daily concerns of ordinary working Georgians. We just passed legislation, y'all, to cap the monthly cost of insulin for seniors across the United States at $35 a month. And you know who wrote that legislation? Raphael Warnock, your senator, your representative in the U.S. Senate. This man is respected universally in the Senate across party lines. Reverend Warnock has been a voice of moral clarity for civil rights, for voting rights. He has been a voice that elevates all of us in the U.S. Congress, that calls us to a higher duty. Because, as he'll say, Senator Warnock is not a pastor who happens to be a senator. He's a pastor in the Senate who represents the very best that Georgia has to offer. So say it with me again, Georgia. Say vote. Vote. Monroe, say vote. Vote. Say vote. Vote. Now put your hands together for your senator, the Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock.
It's amazing to see all of you here. It's wonderful to be in Monroe, Georgia. And I am especially delighted to be here with my twin brother, John Ossoff. Give him a great big round of applause. I'm serious, that's my brother from another mother. We are twins. He just got all the hair. Thank you so very much, Monroe, Georgia. I'm honored to work alongside him. And while we are of the same party, I want you to be very clear. Not every Senate delegation, even when they're in the same party, work together for their state the way John Ossoff and I do every single week. We compare notes, we talk it over, and we try to figure out what's the best way forward for Georgia. And I believe that that's why we've been able to be so effective and get so many things done for the state. Like when we passed the American Rescue Plan. And when we passed it, I want you to understand right off the bat the way in which we had to stand up, even the people in our own party. Because sadly, state actors who are more focused on politics than people in our state have continually refused to expand Medicaid. And as a result of that, we have seen 600,000 Georgians in the health care coverage gap. And it is a big part of the reason why so many of our hospitals have closed, 10 in 10 years, and then the other day, the Atlanta Medical Center. But here's what happens when you've got two senators who work together. We convinced our Democratic colleagues in a bill that we passed along party lines to put inside of that bill billions of dollars for Georgia and the other 11 non-expansion states. You understand the internal struggle because we've got colleagues who say, well, why should we do that for Georgia? Y'all should have just expanded like our states did. And we said, well, it's not the people of Georgia, it's the state actors, the people who are literally holding the people hostage. We were able to get hundreds of millions of dollars for Georgia to further incentivize Georgia to expand Medicaid so these hospitals wouldn't keep closing, so we get 600,000 Georgians out of the coverage gap. We did our part and we continue to fight. The state left all of that money on the table and 600,000 Georgians in the coverage gap. But if you send me back, I will not rest until we get coverage for our hardworking Georgians. So thank you so very much, Monroe. It's good to be here with Pastor Edwin Beckles, with State Senate candidate Andrew Ferguson. Where are you? All right, you running, we want to see you. Let's hear for State Senate candidate Andrew Ferguson. The state representative candidates Ryan Cox and Debbie Reed. I highlight them because we want to win up and down the whole ballot. Yeah. Let's hear for Councilman Charles Boyce and Councilman Norman Garrett. The message over the next few days is very clear. We need Georgians to keep doing what you're already doing, show up in record numbers. Election day is Tuesday, but we no longer talk about election day. That was a long time ago. My mama and my daddy used to talk about election day. It's election season. Yeah. The issues are too urgent. The stakes are too high. And frankly, the differences between me and my opponent are way too wide for us to wait until election day. We need to make sure we've made huge progress with getting this wrapped up this week. Election early voting ends tomorrow, so tell everybody. Tell your mother and your father, your sister and your brother, tell your coworker, your spouse, your partner, tell Lottie Dottie and everybody that it's time to vote. Are you ready to win this election? It matters, especially in a difficult time like this. It matters who represents you in the United States Senate. I've been fighting these battles long before I ran for office. I have a new job title, but I'm really still engaged in the same project. It's my life's work to stand up for ordinary people, salt of the earth, hardworking people whose names are not in the headlines, but who keep our economy going, who raise children, and keep our schools running and our hospitals running, who serve us in our restaurants, who start small businesses, who work in those businesses, the frontline workers in hospitals and police officers and those who serve us by representing us in dangerous places all over the world. Let's hear it for our veterans. This is my life's work. And so as Senator Ossoff said, I wrote the provision to cap insulin for folks on Medicare to no more than $35 of out-of-pocket costs. And it's because I have spent my career as a pastor. I can't tell you how many bedsides I've stood beside over the years. Too many to even begin to number. I can't tell you how many times I've stood in an intensive care unit with another family. How many waiting rooms I've been in. When folk receive the news that the diabetes had gotten out of control and their loved one has to receive an amputation. Or as a result of the diabetes, the kidneys have been impacted and now they have to go on dialysis. It's the reason why $1 out of $4 in our healthcare system is spent on somebody with diabetes. Think about that, $1 out of 4 in our healthcare system spent on people with diabetes. That means if we get control over this, not only will we help the personal economy of those who suffer, we'll do a lot to help our healthcare economy generally. And so I wrote that provision, and the other day when I talked about it on the debate stage, you remember what my opponent said? As I talked about the fact that we shouldn't be engaged in price gouging, that the corporation shouldn't be gouging a 100-year-old drug. My opponent said they just need to eat right. That's what he said. He's running for Senate and he doesn't know that you can eat right and still have diabetes. Yesterday I was in Fort Valley, Georgia, and I stopped by Fort Valley University and I ran into a young woman who's 20 years old. And she said, I want to thank you, Senator, for capping the cost of insulin. She said, I spend $200 every 2 weeks on insulin. I said, wow. I said, how long have you been a diabetic? She said, I've been a diabetic since I was 7 years old. Somebody ought to tell Herschel Walker to tell this young lady what he said the other day, that she ought to just eat right. Well, listen, I'm a pastor. By the way, I'm an advocate for healthy living and healthy eating and exercising. I try to do all of that. It's hard on the campaign trail, but I'm doing the best I can. I try to embody it. But that's his only answer. Here, I've got a suggestion for Herschel Walker. Maybe he should run for dietitian and I'll run for United States Senate. When I pointed out that we had capped the cost of prescription drugs for seniors, so that people like my mother wouldn't have to choose between buying medicine and buying groceries. When I talked about the fact that Georgia needs to expand Medicaid and get these 600,000 Georgians out of the health care coverage gap, did you hear what he said? He said that if you are able-bodied and you have a job, you have health care. Here's what I've learned from being a pastor. You cannot lead the people unless you actually love the people. You can't love the people unless you know the people. And the only way to know people is to walk among the people. Herschel Walker must not know ordinary people. Because if he knew ordinary people, he would know that most of the folk who are in the healthcare coverage gap are the working poor. They work every single day and they don't have health care. He doesn't know that because he obviously doesn't know those kind of people, but I know those kind of people. They're in my church, they're in my community. I run into them in the grocery store. You know those kind of people. Let me tell you who they are. They are the cashier at your local grocery store. There's a good chance she does not have health care. It's the waiter or the waitress who gave you your food last night and the cook who prepared it in the kitchen. It's construction workers, it's painters, it's folk who are a part of the gig economy, who drive the Uber cars and the Lyft cars. A lot of those folk do not have health care and they work every single day. Let me tell you who those people are. They are the people who in the midst of the pandemic we started calling essential workers. Well, if they are essential workers, they ought to make an essential wage, they ought to have essential health care, they ought to have essential benefits. And they need a senator who actually sees them. You can't work for people you can't see. And so I'm honored to represent you in the United States Senate. I'll give him credit. Herschel Walker was one heck of a football player. I grew up in the 1980s. He could razzle-dazzle you on the football field. But we're on a different field right now. And the people of Georgia need a different kind of champion. Workers need a champion who believes in a livable wage. Women need a champion who believes in equal pay for equal work. And they also need a champion who will stand up for their reproductive rights, who understands that women are wiser than politicians when it comes to their own bodies. Our children need a champion who believes that a child's outcome should not be based on their parents' income. We need a different kind of champion right about now. And if Georgia needs somebody, here am I, send me. I'll stand up for workers. I'll stand up for ordinary people. I'll stand up for hard-working Georgians. It is the honor of my life. Are you ready to win this election? We got to get this thing done. I want you to be clear. I see you. That's what it means to be a pastor. Now that's what you got. You didn't get a senator who used to be a pastor. You got a pastor in the Senate. And I don't mean that in any dogmatic way. Those of you who don't share my religion, I'm not trying to push it on you. Those who don't embrace any religion at all, I want you to understand what I mean. What I mean is I see you. These days are difficult. We've been through 2 years of trying to slog our way back from a pandemic. I see you. The times are hard. It's dark. Scripture tells us that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness overcometh it not. It is our moment, Georgia, to be the light, to let our light shine in the darkness, to recognize that we don't get through this by turning on each other. We get through this by turning toward each other. Even if we don't agree politically, we ought not demonize one another. We ought to see the humanity in each other. That's why I partnered with Ted Cruz to get something done for Georgia. I disagree with him about 200% of the time. I know that's not possible. You understand what I'm saying? But we got to stand together in a moment like this, and you need a senator who knows how to bring people together. And I've demonstrated that I know how to do that, and they can say whatever they want to say as many times as they want to say it. Here it is. You are entitled to your own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. And the fact is, I'm the 18th most bipartisan senator in the Senate. I know how to work with people on the other side of the aisle to get things done for the people of Georgia. Meanwhile, my opponent is campaigning all across Georgia with one of the most divisive people in the Congress. He's showing you who he is right now based on who he's campaigning with. And he recently received an endorsement from someone who spews awful anti-Semitic words and who said that slavery is a choice. Well, my mama told me that birds of a feather flock together. You know who he is based on the company that he keeps. Do you want somebody who's going to divide us or somebody who's going to bring us together? That's the work that I'm committed to doing. And so let's show up. Because we never know the huge difference it will make. Georgia, we didn't know when you did what you did, the way you did it, when you did it, that we'd get a chance to send Ketanji Brown Jackson to the United States Supreme Court.